might as well do it. All right, let's see. Where's the... All right, here we are. So, good afternoon, everybody. This is Bryan Bruce, the host of the Social Athlete Podcast. And before we get started and I introduce our first ever guest on this podcast, I want to give you some background. So, a couple weeks ago, my cousin Paul, who worked with me in the early days of Your Brand Voice, messaged me and said, you need to create a podcast called the Social Athlete Podcast presented by Bryan Bruce or hosted by Bryan Bruce. And the minute he said it, it made a lot of sense to me. So here we are. I took my old kind of, podcast that didn't really have any direction, took Paul's advice, gave it the direction, and the direction is the corporate athlete. The social athlete, I said social athlete. It's the corporate athlete. So here we are, and I want to introduce my first guest, the first guest on this podcast. And Miguel, welcome to the YBV studio.
Thanks, Bryan. This is awesome being here in YBV studios and getting a chance to see, or be back, really. Like, this is more or less like a comeback of sorts.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. I'm really honored to be on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for helping me get this set up going. Miguel was YBV associate number 2. My dad was number 1, and then you were number 2. And real quick story, YBV was growing, and my dad and I were like pulling our hair out, and that's when Paul came into the picture. And I think even before that, though, we needed help. And so my dad suggested that we put together a website, on our website, attracting marketing internship searches on Google. And we threw the page up, marketing internships in Orlando, and we started getting requests from around the country, around the area, and in came an application or an inquiry from a young man out of Indiana State University, and the rest is history. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that experience of reaching out and what you were looking for and what you found?
So this was back in 2011, and I was a junior in college, and I was like, man, it's cold in Indiana. I love Florida, and my parents had always been taking me to Disney World every single year, ever since my first birthday, and I knew that I eventually wanted to move there. I actually did the Disney College program in the spring of 2010, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to make it back, and I'm going to take some strides to find myself after graduation working in Florida somehow. So I was like, okay, let me find an internship that will give me real professional experience. And like Bryan said, I was looking for marketing internships in Orlando, and YBV popped up. I love the fact that Bryan and his dad came from years of hospitality experience. I knew that could be transferable into any type of role that I would want to apply for in Orlando, which is like the hospitality capital of the country, of the world.
Right.
And I knew that this was the opportunity to give me the experience that I needed. So that was what really started this all, and I guess one of the major reasons why I'm sitting in this office today.
Well, it's kind of funny because we're talking about corporate athlete, and you come in, dressed like an athlete. And I remember when. So where does corporate athlete come from? So thank God we put that page together, and thank God that you were doing a search, and thank God we matched up, we connected the dots, and then the story gets even better. Before I go back to the corporate athlete, but the story gets better because we engaged, right? And I was so busy, I couldn't get back to you. I couldn't get back to any of them. I couldn't get back to any of these inquiries. I could barely keep up with my own business, right? And the thing that, really stood out was your tenacity. Your if you said you were going to do something, you did it. If I didn't do what I said I was going to do, you came after me and said, hey, you said you were going to do this. It didn't happen, but I'm here to, bring it back to life. And to me, that's what an athlete does. An athlete shows up. And when it's not perfect, they figure out a way to kind of get through whatever obstacle. And in that time, it was me and my attention. And so your aggressiveness was very attractive to me, and obviously that's why we. But let's go back. So I'm a doorman in Las Vegas. You know, I'm hustling on the driveway. I've got this funny outfit that I used to wear, but I used to make a lot of cash. It was a lot of fun, and I had very low stress. And I made a relationship with the Alan Waxler Group. The Alan Waxler Group is a luxury town car service that ran around through the desert. They drove Mercedes limousines instead of town cars, and I just thought this was amazing. And they had black, and everything was shining, even though they were in the desert. Everything was so beautiful, and I just thought they were amazing. And so anytime we had an opportunity to put people in those cars, we did. And so I built a relationship with their business development guy. His name was Rick Foreman, and over time, he looked at me one day and said, "You are a corporate athlete." And I was so honored to be called an athlete. The corporate part was a little confusing to me, but the more I did research on it and the more I thought about it, it was like, oh my goodness, what makes me successful in this front drive was the same thing that made me successful as an athlete. And so we kind of, you know, as we built our business, we looked for, you know, athletic characteristics in people because our business became more and more athletic. You know, I mean, we can relate. I mean, we get, I'll give you a real quick real life example today, or last couple of days. One of our clients, a restaurant, had a former employee get fired and then is defaming them online. Bad pictures and all this stuff. And so we are like athletes on this trouble trying to solve a problem. And if you don't have the mindset to think quick, light on your feet, adapt, make adjustments, you know, put whatever resources you need into that moment to execute you fail. So the corporate athlete. So the funny part of the story about this is that we engage and, you know, and I'm kind of like, you know, spaced out trying to figure out, you know, which of these inquiries to pay attention to. Obviously then with your tenacity, you start sticking out like a thumb, and you and I make an agreement that you would come down during spring break. If I remember the story correctly, you would come down during spring break, we would run some programs together, we would do some things together, and then if it made sense, we would extend it longer than that. Is that kind of how it went?
Yeah. I distinctly remember how we planned this out. It was our spring break in 2012, and we went to...
10 years ago.
Wow.
It's like nuts.
It was almost 10 years ago, like to this day almost, which is crazy to think about.
Which is nutty.
So you had me come in, and we went down to Fort Lauderdale for one of your first major accounts, and that's where we like met for the first time, and we captured some content, social content for the Sonic Beach restaurant that was out there.
Hold on a second. So we established this and we got going, and then you called me one day and says, "Hey, everything sounds great, but I've got to run something past you. I've got a friend, and if I come, he needs to come with me."
Yeah. That was a major part of the deal.
Yes.
So
I got a 2-for-1.
Yeah, Bryan basically got a 2-for-1 deal of these college kids that he didn't really know, but he was very much drawn to not only the tenacity that we both had, but also our creative way
Energy.
to make this work,
Yeah.
right? So that person that was a package deal was one of my best friends in the entire world, Sean Vadela. We were both marketing students at Indiana State. And we pretty much did everything together. We were on student government together. Like we were not your average business school students. We were business school students that wanted to be creative.
We were young corporate athletes.
Yeah. And when I told Bryan, like, hey, you know, the only way we can make this work is it's me plus one. And so that spring break, we had, of course, the time of our lives because we were getting to do what we love to do, again, capturing content, but also figuring out a way to make this whole entire experience work. I knew that I wanted it to extend beyond just this small experience, and I knew that my goal was to do this internship. None of us knew what it was going to look like that summer of 2012. We were kind of writing that story along with Bryan, which is the most beautiful part about the entire experience, is that what we learned from that is that opportunities don't really come to people that are just handed the entire manual or told exactly what they need to know and what they need to do in order to execute the role. Now, how this ties back into being a social athlete is... Corporate athlete, I'm sorry. How this ties into being just an athlete in general is when you're out on the field, you're not told what you need to do to the T to execute your role. Like, yeah, there are positions, there's plays, etc., but thinking on your feet and coming up with solutions on the fly all come from that.
It's like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And then you got to react.
Yeah, exactly.
You gotta be an athlete.
Exactly. So that whole entire summer, fast forward to our actual internship experience, we did exactly that every day. And we knew that we were wanting to drive the needle forward for Bryan because this was in the early days of YBV, and we wanted to be a huge catalyst for the growth of the company. That's all we really cared about. We didn't really ask, like, oh, Bryan, so what can you offer us? Like, what is the compensation structure look like for interns that are going to be here?
Where's the manual?
Where's the manual? Like, tell me, Bryan. Like, exactly. Like, what can I expect?
I think also in those days, and we're going back 10 years now, so it's not like last week, but back in those days, we were riding the wave of social media change. And so as new features and capabilities were being offered to us, whether it was posting video finally on the feed or scheduling stuff, we were adapting. So we were riding the opportunity, and it's almost like what we're doing today. Yeah. We're doing that today, and so it was an amazing journey. And now Ishan is still with you. Obviously, you guys have created your business. Tell me about your business. What was created from your experience at YBV, and where are you today?
Yeah, so when I was at YBV, we worked with some amazingly talented people. And people, not only just Bryan, but also the entire team that we've cultivated, inspired me to take a deeper dive into creative. And I had this knack for video, knack for photo, and I wanted to find an opportunity that was like, you know what? All that I'm going to do is touch video. All I'm going to do is touch like content. And around the time when I was like developing these skills and just learning video production through just our teammates that have taught me many things and YouTube University, I found myself like, wow, I want to start a production company. And around this time, towards the tail end of our experience together, Ishan came back from his MBA and he was like, let's start a company together. So the name of our company is Vadela. We're a video production company, still here in Orlando after all these years. And he pretty much gave me the confidence that, like, Miguel, like, your work is great, and I think we can grow something from this. And now is kind of the next level for us in our growth was to start a company. And I will say that a lot of the stuff that we learned in the almost 5 years that I worked at YBV, all are still applicable to what we do today at Vadela. And we still have that athlete's mindset when it comes to doing the work that we do. When it comes to taking care of clients and putting solutions together, it's all done with that mindset that you have to be an athlete, because nothing is like, the plays aren't given to you. You're going to deal with different challenges from time to time, and having that sort of athletic mindset.
We're live on camera.
Bella. What's up, Bella?
Come around here and say hi to the camera since you interrupted the video.
Also, side story, what's so crazy is that since we were a part of the early beginnings of YBV, I still remember setting up all the office furniture, like moving in the conference table, and Bella was like still like a little girl. It's so weird seeing her as a teenager.
God. He's driving out, she's going to get in her
and driving. What the? So, anyways,
flies, man. Time flies.
Yeah. So, at any rate, many of those things that we learned at YBV did not go away. If anything, like, they revealed themselves to us that much more in terms of owning our own business.
Well, it's funny because Paul, who suggested the Corporate Athlete podcast hosted by Bryan Bruce, said to me, Bryan, at the time you were very tough on me. But those things are still ringing in my head today. in his business, in digital marketing up where he lives in North Carolina. And it made me feel good because, it's, in sports, your coaches instill the basics, the things that you go back to. Over time, it's the basics. My dad still says, put your butt down when talking about fielding a ground ball. But it really is a trigger just to go back to the basics. And in our business, there's many opportunities that there are now. Vertical video, TikTok, virtual reality, YouTube, whatever it is. We still have to go back to the basics, which is, and I'm talking about the very, very basics of showing up and being ready, and being prepared, and being clear-minded, and being confident, and having great body language. These are the things that help you win before you even start competing. And so you had those things from the minute we engaged online, and throughout our journey together, you were that guy. And it was towards the end of our relationship where I could see that your inspiration needed to be infused. And that's when you and Miguel made that decision. And at the time, it's like a team trades their superstar or loses their superstar to free agency. It hurt. But it was what needed to happen. And what ended up happening since that time is we've brought in other talented people, and they've gone on to do amazing things. And so I sit back and I look over these 10 years, I go, oh my God, Miguel and Ishan have this amazing business going on. They're entrepreneurs. They always wanted to be. They are corporate athletes. We have, Trey and I could go on and on. I mean, the number of people that, and you probably can name them as well as I can, but that have gone on and done amazing things. And that is because we always look for athletes. And athletes are going to take it to the next level, whatever level they end up being on, whatever the journey. And I learned that this business is just like sports. Your athletes change. Kids graduate. The seniors go on to play pro ball. The freshman has to come up and play. And next man up has to learn that there's shoes to fill. And they are big shoes to fill. And you set the bar high, man. And
thank you. Thank you.
So glad to have you here. It's really nice.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. And let me just leave you with one final thought. I come from the background of running varsity track and cross country, and the thing that I learned, not only from Bryan and just telling me every day, got to be an athlete, telling Ishan every day, you got to be an athlete, is that everyone can be an athlete, right? You don't have to play college ball to consider yourself an athlete, right? There are corporate athletes out there, and I think that's aptly named for this podcast, is you've got to have the same qualities as an athlete, and inevitably the level of work ethic and consistency all make you an athlete. There's several people that are going to be listening to this podcast thinking, I didn't do sports, but like what
Victoria, she gets on me because she's like, not everybody's an athlete. They're not going to relate. But what you're saying is true. It's a mindset.
Exactly. And that athlete's mindset is what carries all people that find success forward. In this case, Victoria is an athlete.
Oh, yes, she is an athlete.
and I'm sure you remind her of that every day.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, it's great, man. So thank you for being the first guest on the Corporate Athlete podcast hosted by Bryan Bruce. You are the perfect first guest because you helped my dreams come true. And you did it through demonstrating every single day what a corporate athlete is all about. And you've extended that obviously into your new business, and that business is flourishing. And I'm very proud to see your work, and I'm very proud to see that you are consistently grinding it, and very honored that we were still connected, and we're still doing work. We did some work a couple months ago, and I'm looking daily for work that needs that, that polished, very, very, very high-end story, and that you're famous for being able to do. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Bryan.
Thank you. And thank you guys for joining, and stay tuned for our next guest who we're working on right now.
Just bring Paul.
Fly him down here. It's been a while. He would be a great second guest.
Yeah.
Yes, he would. All right. Let's shut it down.